It is the year 1949, and China has been in a civil war. On one side are the Chinese Nationalist forces, led by Chiang Kai-Shek, and on the other are the Chinese Communist Party forces, led by Mao Zedong. Most people know that the Communists won. Duh, after all, look at the flag. But most people know that the Nationalist forces lost and retreated to the island of Formosa, now known as the Republic of China, or now known as Taiwan, but we really shouldn't call it Taiwan because that pisses off the mainland. Okay, whatever, I'm getting too bogged down in the politics of today. We're here to talk history, so let's parachute right in media res. It is 1949, the war broke out 2 years ago, then stuff happened that was bad for the Nationalists, and now the CCP has been kicking butt down the Chinese mainland. They had just taken over the entire north of China and then crossed the big Yangtze River. April 23rd, they take Nanjing, the Nationalist capital. Shanghai was next. With retreat after retreat, the Nationalists knew that they would not hold on to the mainland, and in May 1949, Chiang Kai-Shek sues for peace and then things are happy ever after. Just kidding. He takes what is left of the army and a good portion of Chinese cultural treasures now housed in the National Palace Museum and flies off to the island of Taiwan. By July, it's clear that the Nationalists are not going to win this and they're going full out to Taiwan. Mao knows this, of course. He also knows that while the CCP and its army, the PLA, does anyone else know that the PLA is not a national army, but instead the private army of the Communist Party? It's crucial for holding on to power. Anyways, the PLA can really do the wave on land, but the Nationalists are still number one in the air and on the sea. If Chiang Kai-Shek manages to escape to Taiwan, then his air and sea forces are going to bomb people in Shanghai and the coastal towns of China like Nanjing, Fuzhou, Xiamen, and more, which he did do like the instant he got to Taiwan. And the longer things stay, it's complicated, then the more likely that the US gets involved and makes everyone sit and play nice. So Mao has got to cross into Taiwan and unify China once and for all. August 1949, the PLA takes Fuzhou. Then the PLA marches on the city of Xiamen, an island with an amazing natural harbor and is extremely valuable politically and psychologically. Chiang Kai-Shek realizes that he will lose this city too, and looks out just 4 miles off the Xiamen coast, where another island, the island of Kinmen, rests. That island, which normally has nothing much more special than a thriving population of horseshoe crabs, sits at the gate of Xiamen's valuable natural harbor, and it lets him control the flow of goods in and out. October 1949, the PLA goes to Xiamen and annihilate 100,000 Nationalist troops. 27,000 of those are killed. Some 20,000 who remain retreat to Kinmen. It was not really a fair fight. This is as expected, but now something unexpected happens. There are not enough boats to go to Kinmen. The PLA originally thought that they could rely on the fishermen to bring boats and, take the boats from anyone who's not okay with it. And the fishermen didn't really want to. They blew up their own boats or sailed far away, very conveniently not being around. The PLA troops came around. Kinmen is an island. You kind of need boats. Nevertheless, Kinmen had to be taken before the army could move on to Taiwan itself. The PLA figured that if they could put enough islands on the troop to make it one-on-one, that they could win. And they're probably right, except they don't know how many troops are in Kinmen. They figured at most there could be 12,000, but alright then. So 20,000 PLA troops are to go to Kinmen. But then there are less than 300 boats, most of them commandeered by the PLA. It has to be done in two groups. The lead general, a guy named Ye Fei, planned for the boats to take 8,700 soldiers first, and then the boats would go back for the rest of the 20,000 soldiers. Sounds a bit hard, I would say, and the guy who has to go do it, General Xiao, sort of agrees. But you know what? The PLA has been kicking Nationalists' butt for years now. They were on a roll, and it seemed like it could go on forever. And the pressure, too, is everywhere. The PLA feels it, Mao feels it, the world is watching, and the consolidation of China must be completed. Failure could invite intervention from outside forces. October 14th, the general in charge of taking Kinmen, General Xiao, gets an alarming piece of intelligence. They capture 2 soldiers who say that there aren't 20,000 troops on Kinmen, there are 30,000, with half the elite 18th Army having already arrived 5 days earlier. Had been assumed until then, that there are just 20,000, maybe 12,000, or even less than that on Kinmen, most of them old, injured, feeble. Not true. He goes to his boss, the General Fei Yi, and tells him, we did not know how many enemy reinforcements had arrived at Quemoy, or Kinmen, which made the preparation for the invasion of Kinmen inadequate. General Ye refuses to postpone. He's saying, the enemies defending Kinmen have already become frightened by us, like birds scared by the mere twang of a bowstring. October 22nd, alarming news explodes onto the scene. Intelligence reports find that a division of the elite 18th Army had appeared on the waters of Kinmen. General Xiao speaks to General Fei Ye and asks for a delay from October 24th to 25th, just 1 day. Ye tells Xiao that his own Intelligence reports say that there are just 12,000 troops on Kinmen. This was wrong and they paid for it. October 25th, 8 p.m., the night of the attack. Again, new reports. Army HQ tells Xiao that one regiment has already landed on Kinmen, but rather than ordering him to stop the attack, they tell him to accelerate and race to take the island before the rest of the national forces can, quote-unquote, land. Xiao begs for more time. He needs to know how many people are actually on that damn island. He calls for General Ye personally, but does not get him. The attack starts. October 25th, midnight. The boat set off at Kinmen. The boat set off in silence because none of them are motorized, and it takes them about an hour and a half to get to Kinmen. The first 8,700 soldiers are delivered to the beaches successfully at 2 a.m. But while it is happening, the tide starts to go out, and before anyone can do anything about it, the boats get stuck. The Nationalists had put mines and barbed wire under the water for this very purpose, and the boats had sailed right over them until the tide had gone out. It was chaos. It gets worse. A Nationalist patrol accidentally sets off their own landmine on the beach, and a searchlight scans the entirety of the beach, and it sees all those boats stuck there. They send airplanes and fire artillery at those stranded boats and quickly destroy them. There would be no second wave. The 8,700 troops on the island were alone. It took 3 days of brutal fighting where the PLA soldiers went up against Nationalist tanks without anti-tank weaponry. They had been set in 3 parts to be assembled, and the second and third parts were still back on the mainland, and an overwhelming numerical advantage. It took 3 days, but nevertheless they lost, and they lost badly. Not a single person sent in the first wave made it back. Mao Zedong would later say it was the biggest loss the PLA ever took from the Nationalists. Remember when I said that the PLA thought that there were only 12,000 troops on Kinmen, and those troops were mostly the sucky types who would have no chance in hell against the battle-hardened PLA? This turned out to be very wrong too. The 20,000 troops already on Kinmen had had time to train, and the general did a great job with making them much better. And then Chiang Kai-Shek, realizing that Kinmen mattered a lot, went ahead and sent the 18th Army, another 20,000 of his best troops. Half of them had already made it to the island when the attack started. The rest came later, waiting for a storm to pass. Those were the guys the PLA had seen back on October 14th. So when everything starts, the PLA was not one-on-one with the Nationalists. It was 1-on-5. They put up a fierce fight, but they weren't going to win. The PLA had forgotten a number of crucial things after all the wins in 1948 and 1949. They did not have boats, they did not know the terrain, and they did not know their enemy. They lost badly, learning a crucial lesson. They were in no way ready to cross the 100-mile Taiwan Strait to invade Taiwan itself. The PLA would take a few other islands in the coming years, but China would go no further than Kinmen. The island would become the frontline position for tensions between China and Taiwan, with China shelling the island during the Strait crises, until tensions began to die down over time. Taiwan still owns the island today, is now opened it to the general public. You can go there now to taste the amazing strong liquor, poke a horseshoe crab or two, and stand on the beach and look at the Chinese mainland, just a few miles away.